Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I will just say I'm really happy. I heard that there's 40 people coming here every day except today, and from my perspective, I'm really happy that it's just an intimate crowd. So my name is Eman Safadi, and I'm very honored to be a moderator of this panel today. And our topic is if you've ever thought about starting a record label. So before we begin, I would like to turn it over to our esteemed guests, our panelists who have been joining us from all over, to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Richard. I run 3 indie record labels out of the UK. One's called Tin Angel, one's called Meat Machine, and one's called Unheard of Hope. Yeah, that's me. Been doing it for about 10 years now, and just about getting to know what I'm doing, I think. Oh, you got one already.
My name's Vincent. I run Mama Bird Recording Co. out of Portland, Oregon, not Maine. Been doing it about 8 or 9 years, and I'm just faking it. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kevin Pederson. I'm from New York, New York. I run a record label called Your Rupture, which is a indie rock record label. I've worked with bands like Parquet Courts, Ice Age, Royal Headache, Fucked Up, a Montreal band called Think About Life. I do everything from finding the bands to, working on the recording schedules, handling their manufacturing, marketing their records, and starting the process all over again. I also do A&R for other labels. I worked for 2 years at Dead Oceans, which was part of Secretly Canadian, and currently I am doing A&R at Fat Possum, which is a Oxford, Mississippi-based record label, managed catalogs by Al Green, Townes Van Zandt, and work with newer artists.
Great. Let's give everyone a round of applause just before we begin for being here. So thank you. We're really, really excited to have you all here and just to hear about your expertise and experience about running a label to inspire those who are interested. So my first question, according to my cue cards, is what should someone consider before starting a label?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons why someone would start a label, whether you're an artist or... It's a difficult question because I guess it's just down to circumstance. I think you have to start small. Obviously, you're only ever really going to start with one project, and you take one thing at a time. And the best thing you can do really is ask to find some peers, ask them how it works, and start to learn, because you're never going to do anything until you start doing it. And by asking people, you're just going to learn maybe to avoid the mistakes that you might make. So, yeah, learn everything. Learn the practicality of running a business, which is any business has to do, like tax and all of those sorts of things, company registrations. Learn where does the income come from to run a record label? How does that going to work? You have to learn contracting, all of these things. So there's a lot of due diligence that you should really be doing before starting something, an enterprise where you're going to represent people, and then just chuck yourself in, because you have to start something. Just do your learning, chuck yourself in, and have some faith in what you're working with.
I would start by saying be sure that you want to do it, because it is maybe the one of the hardest and dumbest business models there is, particularly in a small indie label. Be absolutely sure that this is something that you feel compelled to do. It is. I like to think that it's not. I think the phrase passion project is kind of belittling, but it has to be something like that. You need to love it. Yeah, I mean, when I got started, I just picked every brain I could, and just kind of, there's so much to a label, and every label is different. as far as how much they get involved in. But the other thing is that that artists are putting their careers in your hands. So it's something you really have to think about, because there's a lot of responsibility there.
Yeah, I think you just want to be involved. You want to be involved working with bands because you love music and you love bands and you want the experience. Maybe you aren't a band, maybe you can't play an instrument, but you just want to see how it works, and you love like the canon of music, and you want to sort of fit into that some way in time. You know, you're creating art and you're working on art. You very rarely can create a business model that would be profitable. So the thing that you're going to get out of running a label is like the satisfaction of having taken part in something that you want. Over time, maybe you'll find out you're very good at the business side of it, and people will work with you because they can depend on you. More often than not, record labels are fantastic places for resources of knowledge. They have access to a little bit of everything across the field. They have like a general sense of retail, where the stores are. They have a history with DSPs. You have sort of interactions with booking agents. So if like a new band comes along, you can pass that along. You sort of want to be good at networking and like want to see these sides. It has to be fun, mostly because the business side, which you pick up over time, is actually the biggest. The reality is like the biggest bummer you could ever run into, because no one gets involved in music to make money. They're just like, I want to be cool. This is like the most fun. I want to go out partying every night and like have people pay attention to me. I want to meet people from across the world. Like, I had I've been in my bedroom for the longest time, and I had no idea there were other people like me all the way in France or some ridiculous reason. So you just want to start a record label because you want to, and you want to sort of get out of the world that you're living in.
I can talk. I have a loud voice. Do I need this? I can. So, okay. And I think I need to ask this question because I am in ATV, and they do fund arts and culture within here in Alberta. But what are the initial costs of starting a label?
I don't think there's there's not massive costs, I think, to start a label. There's things out there like Bandcamp that you can you can start a micro label very, very cheaply. So you don't have to like rush in and manufacture like vinyl and all these things. Starting with something that's like community based, like a tape label that has that you're not going to make a business out of tapes, but you're going to start something that's creative and something that people can share and something that people can care about. And then that's the core. That's where the core has to start from. You have to care about something, and then other people have to then care about it also. So I would say this is totally opposite to how actually I started, but I would say, thinking back, having a situation whereby that you're supporting the best labels, they're the ones that like start from a community, and the artists like support one another, and they support the label, and that grows out of the community and splinters into different communities, and that has the most longevity. Totally the opposite way around that I did things. Yeah, so I was obviously dumb, but now thinking back, I think that's the way that the best way to do things. Yeah, I think that's the make sure the expectations from everyone, the communication's really good, and then you don't have to. To set up on digitally, I think it can be a little bit. There are costs like setting up on DSPs if you're an independent artist. and you don't have a sales history, there's like monthly costs, etc. So, but Bandcamp's the best one, eh? Everyone uses Bandcamp, and that's the place to start, I thought.
I agree with everything you just said. I have been going fortunate to start things out of a community and build in that way, and I think it is the best way to do it as a small label, and I hope to always do it that way, to have our artists. It's important to us to have that our artists buy into what we're doing and support each other, and I always tell them, like, you know, we can't just like launch your career immediately. Like we don't have that, like, the resources. We're not in that place right now, but so we need you to be involved, and you to support the other, you know, other artists. And we do a lot of things where we bring everyone together and make that happen. But I think it's, as far as like numbers or expenses, definitely start slow and match the amount that you spend with where you're at. Like, I don't know if there are any publicists here, but don't pay for a publicist until you absolutely should pay for a publicist. It's a lot of money, and everybody wants their record on vinyl, but maybe wait until you have people to buy that record. So yeah, I don't know. I think that it's just, but at the same time, I'm also the kind of person that like just does stuff because they want to do it and then figures out how to do it later. So I can't say that I really followed this all the way through.
I think the big thing, even more than the financial costs, is time. Like, you need to invest a lot of time in yourself to be able to go through, you know, to go through projects, to sort of like get them right at a small scale and become a dependable source. You know, if you don't treat your artists right, they're going to talk shit. You're not putting out any more records. Like, you don't pay people. Like, you get involved in music because you love the music, but as your role in the record label is being dependable, transparent, you know, like, and fair. If you start taking advantage of artists in the most minute way, or you dig your heels in the ground over small things, you're going to run into trouble. Either in that relationship or other ones, even if you're right, or even if it makes sense why you're doing things. Sometimes it's just a position you have to give, and you have to learn over a long period of time how to do that without destroying yourself and, you know, safeguarding yourself from making bad decisions or maybe hemorrhaging money you shouldn't be doing. You do need, in time, you do need to start upping your releases so that you are a credible source at selling records. Like, you are a record label, you're not just cool. Like, you want to figure out how you can successfully release a physical album. Making an LP, you know, is going to cost you like, I don't know, like $6,000 to $10,000 for like a regular run. It's expensive to figure out what your costs are and to define them, or like figure out where you're saving, where you're losing money. You need to invest that. Like, it needs to be, you should only spend as much as you can stomach or your wallets will afford. But as you go along, you do need to invest money over time, and you do need to find ways of paying for it. And as your role, you know, as a role of a record label, a lot of your job is fundraising and making sense of money. So when you do promise an artist the world, you're able to deliver it. And when you're able to deliver that into like a financially lucrative way, press-wise, whatever, you know, you can really then sell yourself to other bands who might be looking for deals.
Thank you.
So,
oh, sorry.
I would say, like, if you want to start a whole campaign, you know, like, you could do it very cheaply, but then as you go and try to reach national audiences, you do need, like, I don't know, you could run a campaign for like $10,000 to $20,000.
Thank you. So you did mention fundraising as one way of, acquiring capital in order to invest back into your business. But how do record labels make money? So what is the structure there?
Well, I mean, it's by selling records. That's. I would say that, kind of moving back slightly to the last question is. One point is definitely like when you start doing, and even when you're established, I think it's important to pace yourself. There's always there's a lot of great music out there, and there's always I think as A&R and people that run labels, certainly for me, I get sometimes I get like knee-jerk reactions to I'm just like that was so amazing, and you just can't obsess over it until you fly around the world to meet these people, and then you have to work these things. But you have to bear in mind that you do the best job for these people and these artists if you pace yourself and you know your limitations. And that's even more important in the early days to pace yourself, to make sure that you maybe just do one campaign at a time. Are you saying, Kevin, that you do one a year for the label? So that's really focusing in. Some of the best labels, like XL, they very rarely take people on, and they really super focus in those artists. So that's a great model. Back to your question, it's the same. A record label is very similar, I think, to. I mean, in my case, it is similar to how you need to look at yourselves as artists, and that's look at the different income streams that are potentially going to sustain you. And for a record label, the master royalties, so selling records, we have a publishing arm as well. So we, not for all of our artists, but some of our artists, we have a share in publishing. We have a booking arm, so we support with that. Because when an artist starts out, you're not necessarily going to be able to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together straight away, because it's a new thing. So we help develop all of those kind of parts of the business, and we invest early doors, and then down the line you kind of get once you sort of build a catalogue, then things begin. It takes a while. It just takes a bit of time to build a catalogue, to build some relationships, to build a reputation, and then you'll be selling records on the road. Maybe you'll be selling through distribution. You have your Bandcamp, so you sell music direct. You might have some radio play. So understanding the collection societies, which is the on the master side. So you sort of PPLs and you like Resound, who was the guy that was speaking yesterday. That understanding how those royalties work, making sure you're registered properly as a label in the same way as you would as an artist, to make sure those royalties can flow back to you when you do have radio play, because it can be very small, but it can be significant sometimes if you can get some, if you get on an artist that's on commercial radio, those royalties can come back and they can be significant. They can outweigh the actual record sales sometimes. So it's understanding all of those things. There's lots of them really. There's lots of different income streams around the core one.
Yeah, I would say all those things, and then one that's hard to rely on, but it's probably the most helpful, would be sync licensing. When we get something in film or television, it quite often can pay for the next record. So building those relationships is extremely important. And just in general, both of you guys were saying, just going to things like this and going all over the world and meeting other people that are doing this or different parts of this industry, and keeping in touch with people, making friends, being somebody that other people want to help, it's, and showcasing who you are, and you got as far as you've gotten because you probably have pretty good taste, and other people might like what you're doing too, and because you're passionate. So don't be afraid to share what you have. so many times I've like met someone and then like waited for the right like moment to share this like new artist, and really when things like happen, it's just because I'm like stoked on something and I share it with everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best advice is to learn what kind of rights you're owning, like, or dealing with. You know, for a record label, you don't exclusively work in master rights, and sometimes you do get into publishing or, you know, like a touring arm, but, you know, those would just be ways of keeping money in. But you should really define what master rights are, like where they go from, like physical, digital. It doesn't mean T-shirts. You know, it doesn't. You know, publishing is all off the board until you sign it. You know, and a lot of times, if you're very small and you try to get a hold of everything, like, you'll be seen as like someone who just wants it to, you know, like a 360 deal is a deal that would encompass every aspect of an artist. And if you were to offer that to anyone, they would look at you like a monster, and they would say, or they're just stupid, like, and they take it. But like anyone who is smart and you would want to be in business with would sort of recognize that as being taking advantage of the situation. So you do want to figure out what master rights are, which are any ways that you can sell the recording. And they are distinctly different to many other ways in the music industry where you make money. So you really focus on this one aspect that has those, you know, any way that you can sell a recording.
Right, thank you. Like many startups, usually they're doomed to fail. So, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with the record label industry. So what advice can you give to anybody who's really interested in starting a label so that they can avoid failure and actually be successful?
I think one good thing would be to, like, going back to the sort of community, like the way you start off, to try and curate what you do if you're looking to do more than one release, so that the audience will be able to move easily between that first release and that second release and the third release. Otherwise, you find yourself in a position whereby if you're starting your brand, then you're essentially, if the roster is too eclectic, then you're starting again every single time, looking for a new audience and like looking worldwide. But really, if you can have a label that can either tap into a spirit that people can latch onto, whereby the spirit of what they do, you know, an audience will buy into like release 1 and release 2, and they'll be waiting for that release even no matter what it is. Then you're adding value then to the artists that are coming onto that to that roster, on top of the practical side of things as well. So, and that can be, that's a valuable thing, and I've over the years I've done that by trial and error, really. I've had releases where I would do like one release that was just sort of like a super weird industrial release, and then the next one would be like a pop album, and then the audience would bought the industrial one would hate the pop album, and vice versa. So I was just kind of making things difficult for myself, really. Even though I love both of the records personally, the audience are in very different places. So early doors, if you want to make things easier and give yourselves a bit of a chance of longevity, then trying to find that balance whereby, you know, if you're printing 500 records, in theory, you know, you could. Some of the most successful labels are very, very niche, and they have a small audience, but that audience is rabid for what that label puts out, and they last because they just give those people this great thing that they want. So it might not be that what you guys want to do, but I think it's like, for me, it seems like a smart move early doors.
Yeah, completely agree. There's nothing better than when we announce a record from an artist that like I know no one knows, and I see the same names ordering that record directly from us, like that first day. It's like, you know, you've done your job as a curator if people have that kind of trust, especially, you know, usually they'll buy it just based on one song, you know, to pre-order. As far as like being able to keep doing it, as I was saying earlier, like how hard it really is to do. It's one of those things, like as an artist, as a label, the difference between the people that like make it and don't, other than like taste and talent, is just not quitting, just keep going no matter how hard it gets. And that goes back to like making sure that this is something you feel like you absolutely need to do. And one thing that I've found incredibly helpful is that that all of the artists that I work with either start out as or become very, very dear friends, and I take the commitment that I make to them like very seriously, and that's it becomes probably the strongest motivation there is, that like these people that you care about, like their career is dependent on your work, and I would say that that's kept me going. And sometimes when I would otherwise think like, what the hell am I doing? Just like remembering that people are giving their careers and their art to you because they believe that you can help them. And so fulfilling that, it feels like a goal that has some longevity to it.
It'd just be okay with losing money. Like, what is the general rule? Like 1 out of 10 records pays for the other 9. Like, over time, learn where you can save money and don't make foolish mistakes. But just be okay with the finances not working out the way you want them to. If you look at a record label as funding the artwork that you want to see in the world, it makes it much easier. You can just sort of go like, they're a bunch of idiots who don't know what's good for them, and I'm exaggerating a lot, but music has proven time and time again, the best records don't always succeed, and you have to be sort of like sure of yourself and confident in what you do, and be okay with things not being financial successes, but being happy with the art that you're putting out there in the world, and that it is credible, and that you're going to keep doing it. If you figure out after like a bunch of records, like you cannot get over that hump of making money, maybe that shows like how, that becomes like an example of how the business is just not functional. But if you can do that, if you can get something to work once, you can get it to work again. And in between, just make sure you refine your expenses and what you do to a point that you don't really lose money, or you lose as little as possible.
Thank you very much. So now I want to turn it over to you guys to see if there's any questions that you would like to ask our panelists today. I can either, I don't know if this would reach out, but I can Oprah it and come directly to you. Or if you'd like to come up here, it's more up to you. So does anybody have any questions? Ryan.
It really depends on the project, because your contract will define where the rights are. This is another moment of like looking at rights, and you would in that contract define, you know, what your contract is about and what the agreement stands with. You know, oftentimes you will allow everyone in the, you know, you could either allow everyone in the band to have their solo projects, but if they, you know, perform together, then it falls under your contract. Your contract could define, you know, we're only putting out one record. There's no further rights. We're not guaranteed anything else after this. Person can go record and do whatever they want. You know, it's like a situational thing. If you're investing like $100,000 in a band, you want to make sure that you're able to recoup by getting the best recordings from those people that you're working with. You know, other times, you know, you work with a band whose big thing is that they release a lot of songs on a lot of labels, and if you were to make that an exclusive deal, you would really crush the thing that makes them wonderful and also really defines the sense of community of what, you know, like the sort of field of art that they're in. So I think that's something that you have to be confident. Again, it's like another thing that you're okay with, because you grant, as a record label, you grant those rights to the people you're working with. And, you know, if you want to be hard, you would make sure that you have everything they do for a certain period of time, every side project they want or they're involved with, and then you can loosen it. It really is it really depends on what you're doing.
Yes.
I would say for me, like it's when there's obviously the music's great. The people, like, you have a good connection with them. They you can have kind of a shared ambition for a project, and an aesthetic as well. For me, is like that an artist has a kind of holistic like handle on everything that they do. You know, that like from like visual materials and all of those things, and a preparedness to be successful. And it's sometimes you'll get the great record and you won't get anything else, and it becomes hard then. So it's kind of, I find it pretty unique to get like the whole package. You don't always get the whole package, but so you have to see where you can kind of add value to that. But that's what I suppose that's what it is like working with most of the artists that I work with. I mean, if not all, I would put down as developing art. Everyone's developing all the time, eh? So you don't expect the finished article, but yeah, that sort of thing. And then bands that are at a certain point, or artists at a certain point in their kind of creative ambition, you know, rather than 3 or 4 albums down the line or something that are just sort of maybe jaded by the process, because it's hard to kind of pull back from that, I think, sometimes. Yeah.
I would say that first I just want to feel like, whoa, you know, like there's been some artists where I've listened and I'm like, okay, I want to keep them on my radar and pay attention and see how they grow. But for the most part, like, I am just waiting to just have that feeling where, like, no matter what the situation is, I have to do this. You know, I have to figure it out a way. But beyond that, it is taking your time with the artists and getting to know them and making sure that you're on the same page as far as your shared goals and your beliefs on how, like, we do things kind of our own way, and it's a very family, community oriented way, and I'm not really interested, even if I love the art, like, I'm not really interested in working with artists that, like, don't buy into that or aren't excited about that, because it doesn't help. But yeah, I think having it's always nice to see somebody that has, like, a clear aesthetic vision, and is honest and real, and, like, it doesn't feel, when you look at their, like, social media and stuff, it doesn't feel forced. It feels genuine and matches the music, and it just feels like something that you can work with. And as far as, like, you know, I get a lot of demos, and the stuff that I always, like, click on and pay attention to are the people that reach out in a thoughtful way. It's not like they're just sending a blast to every label they can get an email address from.
A good record, like you want to hear something that you've never heard before and you want to be involved with, and then also something that you can imagine something that you imagine could continue. Getting choked up over this. I'm bearing my soul, bear with me. You know, you also want to see something that has, like, a vision to grow, and that you are going to enjoy working with someone for a long time, if that's what you want. Or, you know, I guess in the short run, a great record to just put out and see what happens, or something that you see, like, when you do feel like you can go all in on a project. You're like, this band is going to be writing hits for forever. I'm going to go hog, like, that, you know. A lot of your job is, in, you know, from my, you know, in a lot of ways, you work with, unless you're working in, like, with a fully established band, a lot of your work in a record label is helping them navigate. You know, it has a little bit of management side to it. So you're trying to put them in a place where they can have other relationships, like a booking agent, like a publicist, like a radio team. You know, as you start those relationships, they immediately become the band's. Like, I may hire a publicist, but that publicist covers everything the band does. They work for the band. You're just paying for it. And there's, like, a good sense of, you know, like, when you help set up a relationship with a booking agent, you sometimes give that band tour support, but you don't see any money back from their tours. You make your money on masters. So you're looking for something that you can sell and help a band become, you know, self-sufficient. So you no longer have to give tour support. They create that sense of community. They have, like, a, you know, like, a sense of their market. People like them, have, like, history with them. You know, music is habit forming. You want to make it so people think of this band as part of their life. And so you want to see a band that would do that some way, either having the spark of a great song or the ability to sort of, like, trudge through all that other stuff.
Adam.
You can say a little louder. The internet. I live in New York, so it's a little easier because everyone comes to me. But, and especially in working, the field of finding bands is surprisingly small. You know, almost every band I've ever worked with has not. You know, I work with most bands on their first record, and by the time the end of my contract, every other, you know, like, I have competed. 4 bands that I've worked with have ended up on Matador immediately after working with them. You know, all of a sudden you do such a great job, you're competing against yourself. So you have to keep your ear to the ground, be like involved in music as like through the internet, and be able to like run. Like there is like a little bit of ambulance chasing involved. And other than that, word of mouth. You know, I think one of the hard things in my time, the hard thing was that the record stores and physical records don't exist in the same way. So you can't go to a trusted source like a record store who would recommend a record and maybe see what else is out there. Are there any independently made releases? Like, that is harder and harder. I think that's one of the weirdest things, is that that's the world I wanted to be in, and then all of a sudden it's just sort of like, oh, people don't make singles anymore. So, yeah, the internet and word of mouth.
I would say like the number one is always trusted ears sending stuff, particularly when it's like one of our artists or an artist that I have a friendship with or whose music I love. Like when I get something sent by an artist that I trust, you know, then I will listen to it immediately. Otherwise, yeah, MySpace maybe, Reverb Nation. I'm throwing shade. Yeah, I think actually Bandcamp. Like, I find a lot of stuff on Bandcamp. Yeah, mostly just trusted ears, friends, and our artists.
Yeah, same as really. Yeah, if you do kind of a good job and have good relationships with the people that you work with, then generally there's always like projects that kind of come out of projects that you're working on, and we tend to sort of end up working those projects as well. So it's like the branches of a tree, really. So you'll do like one record in Toronto, and then sometimes they're like the guy that played guitar on that record, or you know, there's like all the sort of projects and if you do a good job and you have good relationships, then they reach out to you and you listen, and generally if you're into the first thing, then it's very possible that you're kind of going to be into that as well. And Bandcamp's the thing, really, because there's a lot of, because the entry levels to Bandcamp are pretty much zero, then some great first records will be put on Bandcamp as like tape releases and digital releases, and you just listen to the, you know, that's just like perfect because it's there, you can listen to it, and those first records are just the thing. Do you know what I mean? That's the exciting thing. People's first records, so exciting to work them.
One of the weird things is that over time, the trusted voices that you hear go from these people who are like directly involved in the community to all of a sudden, you know, when you do a good job and you're able to work with these other people well in a way that you don't make yourself look like a maniac, all of a sudden, like, a booking agent will bring a band to you. They'll be like, you know, oh, the reasons that you do get involved in these other sides of the business is that eventually, you know, like when I worked at Secretly Canadian, we got a booking agent brought us this band called Krungbin, like, who are just awesome. And it was one of those things where, like, it came out of nowhere. They were just really excited. Because they were recommended by the booking agent, we had like a direct in with them, and it just was like a really rewarding, successful campaign. You hear it from you get managers who are just like, you've been able to pay and you've been able to like be fair to the artists that I worked with in the past. I want to work with you again. I think that's right. This type of band is great for your model. You'd get that from lawyers who you would like just tear your hair out dealing with like early on, but when they see you are fair with your artists and are able to release a record without them getting involved on the negative side, they bring artists to you because they feel comfortable about working with you. So you do look on the internet, but also you look through fostering these relationships, and eventually stuff comes to you as well. And that needs to happen because it is impossible to pull a rabbit out of a hat every time.
Yes.
You can't address that in a contract because it would be like unenforceable. Like it's the kind of thing where that is the experience. That is, like you're like, you guys told me you were gonna do like 2 tours. We got you this booking agent. They're like, yeah, thought about it, just didn't want to do it. And then other times you could invest a lot in tour support and it just never comes back, and you're just like, you're just eating a bunch of money, and you're, these relationships, that is the everyday problem with every artist you work with. Like, and you just have to either stomach it or move on. You can address it, by voicing your needs and making sure that they try to get them to follow through. But you don't gain anything by fighting or trying to enforce a band to do anything. You could send them a lot of merch to take on tour. They could sell all the merch and then not pay you back. Like that's like a very real problem. And what can you do? You got to work with them for the long time, for a long time. You don't want to destroy your relationship over like a couple $1,000. Like, as a record label, you need to be able to be comfortable in these terrible situations and have like a sort of a parenting role. You are overseeing these releases and making sure that they are done with as little tension as possible. And you get a good support group for yourself, so when you go through these situations, you're like, these mother effers, like, oh my gosh, can you, oh my, oh. And you drink a lot, and and you overeat, and you just sort of like retail therapy helps, but you can't. You need to have like you can't enforce those through a contract. You can only be clear about what you want, and you can also make it clear that they're not following their commitments. But that's the end, and you just decide what is you feel comfortable, what kind of what kind of trouble you're comfortable dealing with. Another story, I'm just going back to this one. I started working with this group called Parquet Courts, and we had like this crazy zeitgeist. They were like the band of South by Southwest. We were selling like tons of records, and they never wanted to have their picture taken. So everyone wanted to take their picture, but they were like, you can film us live, or take pictures at a concert, or find us on the street. If we're together, we're not going to stop you from taking a picture, but we're not going to pose for you. And we got the cover of a magazine. I can't remember which one, but like they fought with this guy who was like, okay, I know this is your policy, but like, this is your policy, but you can't, we got to take some pictures. Can you just pose right here? And they were like, F you. Like, you better just act like it's Pokemon and try to catch them all. Like, like that comes up in almost every artist. That is like a typical story. Like, everyone has their quirks.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Yes. No.
your role, to help with all. So that's kind of our role, is to sort of bring some organisation, especially at when we take on like brand new artists, to put that infrastructure there, put that organisational structure there. This is not necessarily going to be there. The best thing that I can hope for is that I can take enough weight of the practicality of the release. Obviously, the marketing and all the sort of the normal things for record label, but the practicality of a release, like for touring and the logistical stuff, out of the way, so they can concentrate as much as possible on the creative side and not worry about the other things. And that can be done by us as a team, kind of shouldering that weight, and then building a team around them that can shoulder that weight for whatever they might need. And it's down to the in the early days, understanding the individuals that you're working with, and just that, like with the contracting that Kevin was talking about, making sure that enough clarity is in there so everyone knows what their expectations are, and how we want to kind of move forward. And the deeper you can dig in with those early conversations about sort of those aspirations as well. Like I mentioned, like bands moving on to Matador. If I've had bands that their aspirations are not necessarily we're not their first choice. It's like we're not their first choice necessarily, but if we have those conversations and we kind of factor those into the kind of communications in the early days, then I don't feel bad about it. I feel that it's just it's a process, and we're working towards an aim. And if we get to a position whereby that someone else comes on board that can help develop them further, then I've just been part of that story and part of that, and I still feel part of the story going forward when they're really prospering in like huge venues. So it's I think that was a tangent, but hopefully I kind of went somewhere.
All right. I think, do we have time for one more question, or are we calling? Are we? Okay, if anybody has one more question, we will take it. Please.
What was the question?
Would you guys get together to create a super label? Take over the world.
What would be our sort of superpowers?
Oh, wow.
Market share, long reach, deep pocket, charisma,
Yeah.
style, consistency.
Yeah.
A great wealth of record history, and enjoying record failures of the past, and trying to get a great understanding of that, and we're having a great understanding of that, and making sure that we don't make the big mistakes, and we provide a good model for most artists, for the best artists that
I think this is going to happen. Look at that. Okay.
and on different times.
Exactly. All right. No worries. All right. Oh, did you want to ask your one question, or? Do we have time? Okay. Go for it. And then we're after this.
So something that I'm thinking about is like realism, idealism, managing expectations. When you swing fence, you need fun, so you can get first base. And have an intuitive thing, or you think martial arts and have some structure in your
as far as like ambition versus reality.
Absolutely.
Well,
Just like that life cycle.
I think it's you know when we go into like when we start in a relationship, there's always there's always ambition there. It's we can do a lot of things on a practical level, and then it's a case of the things connecting, and it's not, and that's the thing that I certainly don't always have a handle on if something is going to connect. It's connect between an artist and an audience. Sometimes and frankly, I as Kevin mentioned before, like putting art into the world, I'm happy. That gives me a good hit to do that. So we can do certain things. We can potentially just start trying to help publicity, help get the word out, help get music to radio, with kind of knowing what we know about how just being kind of strategic with those things, strategic with resources, and then it's just like taking one thing at a time. I get excited the first time we do a show with an artist, and there's one person that comes to that show that is coming to see that. That's as exciting as like selling out the first venue, and it's as exciting as selling out 400 or 500 capacity places. The first time you get played on a radio show, a new artist gets played on a radio show that we probably get loads of radio play on. The first time that new artist gets played on that radio show is like sick. I love that. It's so exciting, and because you're just kind of sharing those experiences. And all these things are cumulative. And if you have a good enough relationship and those things build up, you get to a place. And I never really know necessarily where that place is going to be. And success could be any of those. Success is the process for me. And it's just that journey. And it's just making sure the communication, we communicate those the way that we both feel about it during that process.
So I'm sure it means something different for every artist. What they want to do and where you see how you can work in that.
Yeah,
it would be a dynamic.
Dreams and and what in real life. They're kind of they're not. You can. You just have to be honest, I think, about what you think, where things are, and things. When you do the right things, try and repeatedly do the right things with a release and with a relationship. You get what you get. At some point, you get happy accidents, basically, whereby you do enough good things, like these things will sort of bounce back at you, and then you react to those things that bounce back at you, and it might be like a really great session that leads to something else, or leads to something else. And these things begin to like swirl, and that's what you're trying to. And then word of mouth will kind of roll around that. As far as like the big, wanting to be, depends what your ambition is. It depends what it is. The main ambition should be just like be able to do art, be able to be healthy, be able to be sustainable. These things. Those should be those short and medium term ambitions. Like thinking too much about being popular or something. This is like. That's not reality. Think short term.
Last thought. I'd said earlier, like a lot of the difference between those that like make it and don't are like the ones that just keep going. And I think that the most important thing that I can do is, no matter what kind of success we're having on a release, like remain confident in that band, because I signed them for a reason. I believe in them. I believe in their art, and making it clear to them that that's how I still feel, and getting stoked on all of the successes, no matter how small, so that we can keep going. Because like the most dangerous thing as an artist is feeling like you deserve something and then like not getting that, and like it can be a killer, like, and just helping your artist not fall victim to that, like getting them to fully believe in, because ultimately you're just an artist, and that's what you're like. If you get to a point where you stop creating art, then you're not an artist anymore, and that's like, I need them to keep being artists. That's the most important thing.
All right, so I'd like to thank our panelists for this great moderation. It's been wonderful.